In a lot of ways, 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons was created as a system that is supposed to give life to absolutely any type of class, character, or ability, and skills were a really important change in 5th edition that made things much smoother throughout, but one skill I really dislike, and here's why perception checks are the worst. If you're not careful, perception checks will become the only check you ever use in a campaign. And it's for a couple of different reasons. It's the easiest check to ask for. Do I see trouble? Do I see trouble? Do I see trouble? It's very easy to get into that little regime of just asking for it continuously and having that check being the one that's thrown at you. But it's also, and you may not realise this at the time, a very metagamey perception thing as well. If you see the Dungeon Master behind the screen, rolling a dice, or asking, how are you opening that door? Immediately your mind goes to, trouble, something's happening, I want to make a perception check. And it just becomes all you do. What's the fix? Ask yourself first, does a perception check really constitute the best result of getting to what you want to do in that example? One of the house rules that I bring in my campaigns, for instance, is that I encourage people to use investigation checks where it's something that they physically can get close to and can investigate. And behind the dungeon screen that I'm dealing with, every check in my campaign that has something that needs to be discovered or worked out will have a lower DC for an investigation check than a perception check, which is generally done from a distance. And actually, if you put in that distance and increase the DC for perception checks, you can quickly sort of scale it up to be, what is a difficult thing? Can you spot the trapdoor from 30 feet away? Very difficult. Can you spot the trapdoor from 2 feet away using your hands? Much easier. I see written down everywhere online on these guides that are put around as to how to make a character, how to make the best cleric or rogue. And so many skills, arcana, history, religion, it could just rattle through about 2/3 of the skill list, are constantly put down as dump skills. Do not pick, they will never come up. Be the DM, be the character that makes sure those come up. I have, again, another little house rule that I try to constitute in my campaigns. Whenever you have a session in Dungeons & Dragons, it's normally 3 hours, give or take. That's normally what the book says that you should do, but life throws all kinds of things in the way of that. But over a course of the 3-hour session, I will, as a dungeon master, try and only let each skill check come up once in a session. Now, it doesn't often happen like that. Sometimes things happen. You're going to have a lot of investigation checks in a session, or a lot of arcana checks. It just happens. But if you're in the middle of a combat and somebody asks, can I spot the weakness of an enemy? Can I tell they're limping? Why do you get them to make a nature check or a medicine check to see whether or not in combat you can pick up on those faint signs of injury or restricted movement? Why don't you make them make an arcana check or history check if it's a construct or magical creature? So many of the checks where you throw in a perception check as a default could be substituted with another check. And what does that gain you? It actually brings a lot of other characters and skills and tropes into the game. Say you come up with a bard or a knowledge cleric, so classes that aren't often picked. It helps to make them feel useful throughout the entire game, rather than just the rogue or the ranger with a high perception check that you just breeze through because perception's all that's happening. The other real problem with perception checks is it alleviates a lot of the sense of urgency or fear within a particular scenario or element of a story that you're trying to write. Pick a horror story as an example. There's something chasing you, something hidden in combat that you can't see that's going to leap and jump at you at any point. Everybody's on edge. If you just let people make perception checks whenever they want, I want to make a perception check. I want to make a perception check. Not only do you mean that they're going to have more and more chance of spotting whatever this creature is and kind of ruining the whole surprise element of it, but it means that they never feel like they can't see it, because if you keep allowing the perception checks, that monster is never truly hidden. They know it's there because you keep allowing the perception checks and they can see you behind the screen smirking and going, yeah, there's something here. But because they can just check whenever they want, there's no real sense of danger or fear. And you never know, as a DM, if you get really strict on how often you use perception checks and how often you let your characters use perception checks, you might find that they start using the mechanics in interesting ways. One of the best things you can do as a player, if there's an enemy that's hidden and chasing you, take the dodge action. You negate all of the stealth, because even if they've got advantage on you, they now have disadvantage on you, so chances are you'll be fine. Use that perception check. Hide yourself. There's loads of things you can do, loads of creative ways you can deal with a situation that isn't just, I use a perception check, yep, I'll allow that, oh, you see it, great, I'll attack it. Problem solved. It doesn't work. It breaks so much of the game. Don't let perception checks be the downfall of how the game runs for you.